You're probably thinking there's a ton of academic vocabulary that you need to know to score high on IELTS, but that's actually not true. Imagine this tomato is your brain. When you're trying to cram lots of vocabulary, this is what happens. Your brain becomes overwhelmed with information and won't recall the right word when you need it. Or you might mix up the meanings, choosing the wrong word in the test. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which vocabulary you need to know and focus on and how to use it naturally. And if you watch till the end, I have something special for you that will help you memorize these words faster so you can use them efficiently in your test. First off, we're going to look at words that act as signposts in your listening and reading. And it's critical that you understand them because they can completely change the meaning of a sentence. The first word that we're going to look at today is however. However is a very important word because it signals that the information is about to change direction. So, for example, the City Council initially approved the construction of a new shopping center. However, following protests from local residents, the decision was reversed and the land will now be used for a community park. Question: what will be built on the land? A shopping center? A community park? So a community park is the right answer because this is what was decided after the change signaled by however. The next word is very similar to however, and it is nevertheless. It basically means despite what was just mentioned. Here is an example of how this can be used in your reading test. The treatment has significant side effects, including nausea and fatigue. Nevertheless, many patients opt for it due to its high success rate compared to alternatives. Question: how do most patients feel about the treatment? They avoid it because of the side effects. They choose it despite the side effects because it works better than other options. Now, you're probably very familiar with the next one, because. Now, I've added it to the list because in Speaking Test Part 2, you'll be asked to provide your opinions and reasons for those opinions, and because can be very handy to get a higher score. Here's an example of how you can structure your answer in Speaking Part 2. Describe a place you have visited that you found interesting. I found the Louvre particularly fascinating because the striking contrast between classical and modern architectural elements caught my eye. The next word is therefore, and it means as a result of a consequence. You can use this linking word to demonstrate a clear logical progression between ideas. It's very useful in writing task 2. Some people believe that university education should be free for all. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Basic response: free university would be good. More people would go to university. Band 9 response: removing financial barriers would enable students from disadvantaged backgrounds to access higher education. Therefore, social mobility would improve, reducing inequality and creating a more meritocratic society. Next, we have despite and in spite of, and we can use it when something happens regardless of a contrary factor. Despite receiving minimal rainfall throughout the year, the region supports a surprisingly diverse ecosystem adapted to arid conditions. Question: what is unusual about the region's ecosystem? It has very few plant and animal species. It is diverse even though the area receives very little rain. Now, we're going to move on to the next section where we're going to look at words for discussing causes and effects. And the first word that we're going to look at is attribute. We can use attribute when we want to say that something happened because of a particular cause. This verb is particularly useful for your writing task 2 when analyzing problems because it helps you link causes and effects. So, for example, what factors have contributed to increasing obesity rates in many countries? Basic response: people are getting fatter because they eat too much junk food. Band 9 response: rising obesity levels can be attributed to a complex interplay of factors, including the proliferation of highly processed foods and urban planning that discourages physical activity. Now, don't confuse the verb attribute with a noun attribute. Attribute basically means a quality or feature. Now, the next word that we're going to look at is actually the opposite, and it is dissociate. Dissociate means to disconnect one thing from another. Following the scandal, several major sponsors quickly moved to dissociate themselves from the athlete, withdrawing financial support and removing his image from their advertising campaigns, which means they separated themselves from the athlete and ended their relationships with them. The next word is ramification. It is the consequences that rippled out from a decision. In Task 2 essays, this word helps you to discuss complex consequences, but don't use this word as a mere synonym for effect, because ramifications specifically imply complex and widespread consequences. So, for example, discuss the effects of increased automation in a workplace. Basic response: automation makes some people lose their jobs. Band 9 response: the ramifications of workplace automation extend far beyond immediate job displacement, affecting community tax bases, mental health, family stability, and potential exacerbating socioeconomic divisions. Now, another word that is related to ramifications is implications. They both refer to consequences, but implications talk about consequences that are implied rather than explicitly stated. For example, in your listening, recognizing this term will help you identify when speakers discussing potential consequences. For example, the research findings have significant implications for early childhood education policy, suggesting that current assessment methods may be limiting creative development. Question: according to the speaker, what does the research suggest about current assessment methods? They effectively measure all aspects of child development. They may be restricting children's creativity. Now, we're going to talk about words to describe charts and graphs. And the first word that we're going to look at is appreciable. Appreciable means something big enough that you can definitely notice it. In writing task 1, for example, when describing charts, this word will help you score higher for vocabulary range. For example, the graph below shows changes in birth rates of country X over the period 1920 to 2020. Basic response: there was a decrease in birth rates after 1960. Band 9 response: there was an appreciable decrease in birth rates following the introduction of contraception in the early 1960s. Also, don't confuse this word with appreciate. Appreciable means noticeable or significant, when appreciate means grateful and thankful. So you don't want to say, I'm appreciable for your help, when you're trying to say that you appreciate someone's help. The next word is negligible. And it's the opposite of appreciable, because it refers to changes so small they hardly worth mentioning. Knowing this word is crucial in IELTS listening because it can help you distinguish important information. While there was a slight change in temperature in region A, the impact on crop yields was negligible, with only a 0.3 difference compared to the previous year. However, region B experienced a significant decline of 15% in agricultural output. Question: which region experienced a substantial change in crop yields? Region A, because it had a temperature change. Region B, because the change in region A was described as negligible. The next word is substantial. And we can use this word when we're talking about something that is definitely a lot, a really significant amount. In speaking part 3, this word can help you express magnitude of changes with high precision to get a better score. How has technology changed the way people in your country communicate with each other? Basic response: technology has made big changes to how we talk to each other. Band 9 response: There has been a substantial shift towards instant messaging platforms, with face-to-face interactions declining by approximately 30% over the last decade, according to recent studies. But don't use substantial when discussing emotions or personal feelings. This word is more appropriate for quantifiable things. Now, what's the opposite of substantial? It's marginal. We use marginal to refer to small, often borderline amounts or differences. In reading passages about research findings, recognizing this word will help you avoid selecting incorrect answers that exaggerate small effects. For example, the new teaching method showed marginal improvements in test scores, with students scoring on average 2.3 higher than the control group. Question: what does the research suggest about the new teaching method? It significantly improved student performance. It led to a slight improvements in test results. The next word that we're going to look at when describing charts and graphs is fluctuate. Fluctuate means going up and down irregularly. So do not use it when talking about steady increases or decreases. The word fluctuate specifically implies there are movements and variations in both directions. Now, this word is specifically useful for writing task 1 when you have to describe a chart with irregular patterns. Now, here's an example. The graph below shows unemployment rates in country Y from 2000 to 2020. The unemployment went up and down many times between 2000 and 2020. Band 9 response: unemployment rates fluctuated considerably throughout the 2-decade period, reaching a peak of 8.7% during the 2008 financial crisis before falling to 5.2% in 2015. The next useful word that we're going to learn is converge. Converge is used to describe when different things come together and meet at the point. For example, in writing task 1, you can use this word to precisely describe when two or more lines start moving closer together. The graph below shows male and female literacy rates in country Z from 1960 to 2020. Basic response: men's and women's literacy rates became more similar after 1990. Band 9 response: male and female literacy rates, which differed by nearly 25 percentage points in 1960, gradually converged over the period, reaching near parity by 2010. But what word can we use to talk about the opposite situation, when two similar things start going in completely different directions? The word we're looking for is diverge. Now, diverge can really help you in your reading test because it signals an important difference. But don't use this word when you mean differ, because diverge specifically means a movement in different directions from a common point. So here's an example. After following similar patterns throughout the 1990s, the economic performance of the two regions began to diverge sharply in 2002, following the implementation of different policy approaches. Question: what happened to the economic performance of the two regions after 2002? They continued to develop in similar ways. They began developing in significantly different directions. Now, in the next part, we're going to look at words that help us describe trends and changes. And the first word that we're going to talk about is deteriorate. Now, deteriorate means getting worse over time. For example, in a listening section, this word signals negative change. So here's an example. Initially, water quality in the lake was acceptable. However, due to increased industrial activity, conditions deteriorated rapidly between 2015 and 2018. Question: what happened to the lake's water quality between 2015 and 2018? It remained stable despite industrial activity. It became significantly worse due to industrial activity. Be careful though, don't confuse this word with decline. When we use deteriorate, first and foremost, we're talking about quality, not just quantity. For example, you cannot say The population of the town deteriorated from 5,000 to 3,000. You should use decline and say the population of the town declined from 5,000 to 3,000. Now, the next word is ameliorate. While deteriorate means to become worse, ameliorate means to make a bad situation better. For example, in many cities, the high cost of housing has created significant problems. What can be done to address this issue? Basic response: government should build more homes to help the housing problem. Band 9 response: while increasing housing supply is essential, complementary policies such as rent controls and subsidized mortgages could ameliorate the immediate hardships faced by low-income families. The next great word that we're going to look at, unprecedented, meaning it has never happened before. So think COVID or the first time people landed on the moon. In your reading test, this word can help you to find exceptional information that questions focus on. For example, the region experienced unprecedented flooding with water levels reaching 3.2 meters above the previous record set in 1953. Question: what was unusual about the flooding described in the passage? It was similar to previous floods in the region. It was more severe than any previously recorded flood in the area. Now, let's look at conventional. Conventional is the opposite of unprecedented, because unprecedented, as I mentioned before, refers to something that has never happened before. But conventional refers to traditional and standard approaches. In speaking part 3, this word can help you to contrast traditional approaches with modern alternatives. For example, how have teaching methods changed in your country over the last few decades? Basic response: teachers used to just lecture, but now they use different methods. Band 9 response: conventional teaching methods relied heavily on memorization and passive learning, whereas current approaches emphasize critical thinking, group work, and digital literacy. The next word, proliferation. When something spreads or multiplies really quickly, like rabbits. You don't use this word as a simple synonym for increase because proliferation specifically implies rapid multiplication or rapid increase in numbers. For example, discuss the positive and negative effects of the internet on society. Basic response: there are many more websites now than before. Band 9 response: the proliferation of social media platforms has transformed how people interact with average person now maintaining digital relationships with hundreds or even thousands of connections. Now, the next word, diminution. And this word appears a lot in IELTS reading test, specifically in academic and scientific contexts. Now, proliferation is about rapid increase, and diminution is the opposite. It's a gradual decrease or reduction. Researchers noted a gradual diminution in the thickness of ice sheets with an average decrease of 1.3 centimeters per year over the study period. Question: what trend did researchers observe in the ice sheets? They were expanding at a rate of 1.3 centimeters annually. They were becoming thinner by approximately 1.3 centimeters each year. Now, we talked about words for describing changes and trends, and now let's dive into words for expressing importance and priority. And the very first word that we're going to learn is paramount, which means the absolute most important thing. Now, you can use this word in your writing task too to show the hierarchy of importance in your argument. But don't simply use it as a synonym for important, because paramount means supreme in importance, above all the others. Here's an example. Some people believe economic development should be prioritized over environmental protection. To what extent do you agree or disagree? Basic response: I think protecting the environment is very important. Band 9 response: while economic growth creates essential opportunities for developing nations, environmental protection is of paramount importance, as ecological collapse would render economic gains meaningless. The next word is peripheral. Now, while paramount refers to supreme and primary, peripheral refers to secondary or marginal importance. It's not the main thing. So, in your reading tests, it's very important that you can distinguish between primary and peripheral issues in your summary questions. Although the report mentions workforce diversity as an issue, it's peripheral to the main discussion of technological innovation and its economic impacts. Question: what is the main focus of the report? Workplace diversity policies. The economic impact of technological innovation. The next word is imperative. It is used to talk about things you absolutely must do, but don't use it as a synonym for important, because it carries a sense of an absolute necessity. For example, in speaking part 3, when discussing social issues, you can use imperative to express urgency and conviction. Here's an example. What should government do to address climate change? Basic response: government should reduce carbon emissions. Band 9 response: it is imperative that governments implement carbon pricing mechanisms immediately, as even small delays will necessitate more drastic and disruptive measures in the future. Now, the next word is the antonym of imperative, and it is discretionary. Now, discretionary means you have a choice whether to do it or not. For example, in a listening test about business and economics, this word is often used when discussing optional spending. So, here's an example. During the recession, households maintained essential spending on food and housing, but significantly reduced discretionary expenditure on items such as dining out, holidays, and entertainment. Question: which type of spending decreased most during the recession? Essential household expenses like food and housing? Optional expenses like restaurant meals, vacations, and entertainment? So let's take a look at words for describing research and evidence. Now, the very first word that we're going to look at is preliminary. Don't confuse with elementary or primary. Preliminary, as in preliminary findings, are the very first findings before all the work is done. And it is crucial that you understand this word, because in the reading part about research, this word can signal that the results are not final. Here's an example. The preliminary findings suggest a correlation between the drug and reduced symptoms. But the researchers caution that the full trial must be completed before drawing definitive conclusions. Question: what do the researchers indicate about their findings? They have conclusively proven the drug's effectiveness. Their initial results are promising but not definitive yet. The next word is conclusive. While preliminary refers to the early stages, conclusive refers to the final stages, final findings that settle a matter. So in the exam application, this word signals a definitive evidence. So here's an example how it can be used in the reading test. After decades of debate, the archaeological discovery provided conclusive evidence that humans had settled in the region at least 5,000 years earlier than previously thought. Question: what does the archaeological discovery show about human settlement in the region? It suggests humans might have arrived earlier than previously thought. It definitely proves humans arrived at least 5,000 years earlier than previously believed. The next word is verify. And this basically means making sure that something is true. Now, it's not quite the same as confirm, because verify implies some sort of research and investigation. So you cannot say, can you verify if you're coming to the party? When we say, can you please verify if you're coming to the party? It's a bit too formal. Just say, can you confirm if you're coming to the party? The team collected water samples from 50 different locations. However, due to equipment failure, they were only able to verify the contamination levels in 37 of these samples. Questions. How many samples results were confirmed as accurate? Many of you have heard the word verify many times, but what about the opposite of verify? What verb can we use when research proves that something is false? We can use the verb refute. It's a strong word that means a decisive rejection of an idea. The new fossil discoveries refute the long-held theory that this species was exclusively carnivorous. As dental evidence clearly shows, plant matter was a significant part of their diet. Question. What does the new evidence indicate about the species' diet? It confirms they ate only meat. It proves they ate both plants and meat, not just meat. The next word is imply. When you imply something, you're suggesting something without directly saying it. In reading, you'll often find questions that ask what the author implies rather than directly states. While the government report avoids directly criticism of the previous administration's policy, it notes that unemployment rose by 15% during the implementation period, and alternative approaches in neighboring countries yielded more positive outcomes. Question. What does the report imply about the previous administration's policy? It implicitly states the policy was successful. It suggests the policy was ineffective compared to alternatives. While imply means to suggest indirectly, the next word means to state clearly and directly, leaving no room for confusion. This word is explicitly. Explicitly can help you in your reading to distinguish between what is stated directly in the text and what requires inference. The company explicitly prohibits employees from using social media during working hours, with this rule clearly stated in section 3.4 of the employment contract. Question. Which of the following is explicitly stated in the company's employment contract? Employees should limit their social media use during working hours. Employees are forbidden from using social media during working hours. The next words will help you to compare and contrast. And the first word is differentiate. Differentiate means telling things apart. In speaking part 2, this verb can help you to make comparisons where talking about the differences. Describe two cities you have visited and explain how they differ. Basic response. London and Paris are different. London has red buses. Band 9 response. One can differentiate between London and Paris primarily through their architectural styles, with Paris featuring uniform Haussmannian boulevards, while London presents a more eclectic mixture of historical and modern structures. But don't say differentiate X from Y. The correct form is differentiate between X and Y. The next word is homogenize. It is really useful in writing task 2. Basically, it means to make everything the same. When you have to discuss cultural identity or globalization, you can use this term to express your concerns about standardization. Some people believe that globalization has a negative impact on local cultures. To what extent do you agree? Basic response. Globalization makes cultures more similar, which is bad. Band 9 response. The expansion of multinational corporations has homogenized urban landscapes worldwide, with identical coffee chains and fast food outlets replacing distinctive local establishments. Now, disproportionate. This word means that something is much bigger or smaller than expected. Don't use it when you simply mean different. This word implies a lack of proportion or an imbalance that is usually unfair. The tax regime has a disproportionate impact on single-parent households, with those earning below the median income paying up to 15% more relative to their earnings than dual-income families. Question. What does the passage suggest about the tax system? It affects all households equally. It unfairly burdens single-parent families, especially those with lower incomes. The next word is the opposite of disproportionate, and it is commensurate. It's when the amount or size matches perfectly. You can use it in writing task 2 to talk about education and work to express fairness in appropriate levels. Here's an example. Some people believe that high-level executives are paid too much. Do you agree or disagree? Basic response. I think CEOs get too much money for what they do. Band 9 response. While executive responsibilities are significant, their compensation is rarely commensurate with their actual contribution to company performance, often exceeding 300 times the salary of average workers. Now let's take a look at words for describing prevalence and availability. The first word is prevalent. Prevalent means that something is really common in a particular area or time. Don't use it when you simply mean common. Prevalent specifically implies widespread throughout a place or population. So don't say using mobile phones is prevalent among my friends. The scope here is too small. In this context, use the word common. Using mobile phones is common among my friends. Smoking was highly prevalent among adults in 1960s, with over 60% of men and 40% of women smoking regularly. Today, those figures have dropped to 15% and 12% respectively. Question: what change has occurred in smoking habits since the 1960s? Smoking rates have remained consistently high. Smoking rates have decreased substantially among both men and women. The next word is sporadic. Sporadic is quite the opposite of prevalent. It means something is happening here and there with no regular patterns. This word is really useful for your writing task 1 when you have to describe data with no regular patterns. Take a look at this example. The chart below shows rainfall patterns in 4 cities during 2020. Basic response: City A had rain sometimes, but not regularly. Band 9 response: while cities B and C experienced consistent precipitation throughout the year, City A recorded only sporadic rainfall, with dry periods lasting up to 6 weeks between brief but intense downpours. The next word is ubiquitous. It basically means found absolutely everywhere. Again, it's not quite the same as common. Ubiquitous specifically means seeming to be everywhere or in several places at the same time. This word can be really useful in your speaking part 3 when discussing social or technological changes. How has mobile phone technology changed society in your country? Basic response: everyone has a mobile phone these days. Band 9 response: mobile phones have become ubiquitous to the point where even primary school children now commonly own devices, creating significant changes in social interaction patterns and raising concerns about appropriate usage boundaries. The next word is scarce. It means hard to find because there is not enough, like tickets for a popular concert. In reading passages about economics and resources, this word appears frequently when discussing shortages. As fresh water becomes increasingly scarce in arid regions, conflicts over shared river systems are likely to intensify unless cooperative management agreements are established. Question: what problem does the passage identify regarding water resources? There is an excess of fresh water in arid regions. There is insufficient fresh water in dry areas, potentially leading to conflicts. By the way, I'd love to know what you think. Comment if you'd like to see more vocabulary videos. Simply write more if you want more, or tell me which specific videos you'd like to see next. In this section, we're going to look at the words for describing thoroughness and quality. The first word is comprehensive, which means covering absolutely everything. Many students confuse this word with the word comprehensible, which means easily understood. Again, comprehensive means complete and thorough. For example, the professor's explanation was comprehensive, so everyone understood it easily? No, the professor's explanation was comprehensible, so everyone understood it easily. In writing task 2, this word can help you to write about Complete solutions. What can governments do to improve healthcare systems? Basic response: the government should make healthcare better by spending more money. Band 9 response: a comprehensive approach to healthcare reform must address prevention, access, affordability, and quality simultaneously, requiring coordination across multiple policy domains. The next word is superficial. Superficial refers to dealing only with obvious or surface aspects. It's like cleaning just the visible parts of your room, but not under the bed. In writing task 2, when evaluating the trends or approaches, this word helps criticize inadequate efforts. Take a look at this example. How effective are corporate environmental initiatives? Basic response: I don't think companies really care about the environment. Band 9 response: many corporate sustainability programs remain superficial, focusing primarily on marketing and public relations benefits rather than implementing fundamental operational changes that would significantly reduce environmental impacts. The next word is scrutinize, which means examining every little detail very carefully. It's like checking diamond for flaws. In listing passages about governance or quality control, this word signals careful examination. Take a look at this example. Before approving any new medication, the regulatory body will scrutinize the clinical trial data, examining not only effectiveness but also potential side effects and interactions with other drugs. Question: what does the regulatory body do before approving new medications? They quickly review the manufacturer's summary of benefits. They carefully examine all aspects of the clinical trial data. Now, the next word is disregard. Disregard means ignoring something, pay no attention to something. In reading tasks, this word can be really important because it can change the meaning completely. It signals what was not considered in a decision or study. The urban planners disregarded the potential impact on wildlife habitats, focusing exclusively on human residential needs and transportation efficiency. Question: what factor did the urban planners fail to consider? Transportation efficiency, the effect on wildlife habitats. Let's look at some words for discussing actions and implementation. The first word is facilitate. Facilitate means to make something easier to happen. For example, making a process easier or more convenient. It's like having a GPS when you're driving in a new city. In writing task 2, this word can be particularly useful when discussing how policies enable positive outcomes. Take a look at this example. How can technology improve education? Basic response: technology helps students learn better. Band 9 response: interactive educational software can facilitate personalized learning experiences, automatically adjusting difficulty levels based on individual student performance and providing immediate feedback. The next word is the opposite of facilitate. It means creating barriers or making something more difficult. It is hinder. You can use hinder in writing task 2 when discussing barriers. Here's how you can use it. What factors affect a child's educational development? Basic response: poor teaching makes learning hard for children. Band 9 response: frequent relocations can hinder a child's educational progress, disrupting established peer relationships and requiring adjustment to new curricula and teaching styles. The next word is implement. It means actually putting a plan into action. It's like starting the diet that you've been talking about. But don't use this word for abstract concepts. It actually implies actioning ideas or plans. For example, it's incorrect to say the government needs to implement happiness among citizens. No, the government needs to implement policies that promote happiness among citizens. Also, in reading passages about policy, this word appears frequently. Take a look at this example. While the legislation was passed in 2015, the government has been slow to implement the necessary regulatory framework, leaving many provisions effectively dormant. Question: what is the current status of the legislation? It has been fully activated and is working as intended. It exists on paper but lacks the practical regulations needed to make it effective. The next word is formulate. It refers to creation or development of plans, policies, or ideas before implementation. In writing task 2, this verb shows that you understand the distinction between developing and executing plans. Take a look at this example. What should governments do to address climate change? Governments need to think of ways to stop climate change. Band 9 response. Governments must formulate comprehensive carbon reduction strategies that balance immediate economic concerns with long-term environmental sustainability goals. The next word is mitigate, which means to make something bad less severe. It's like taking painkillers for a headache. Don't confuse this word with militate, which means to make influence or significant effect. In writing task 2 about problems, use this word when discussing reducing negative effects. Here is how you can use it. How should cities deal with traffic congestion? Basic response. Cities should try to reduce traffic problems. Band 9 response. While eliminating congestion entirely may be unrealistic, cities can mitigate its worst effects through coordinated approaches, including congestion pricing, improved public transport, and flexible work policies. The next word is exacerbate. It means making a problem worse. In reading task 3, this word signals worsening conditions and often shows a key factor in cause-effect relationships. Here is an example. The poorly planned transport infrastructure exacerbated the city's pollution problems, creating bottlenecks that led to increased idling times and higher emissions. Question: what effect did the transport infrastructure have on pollution? It helped reduce pollution levels. It made pollution worse by causing traffic to move less efficiently. Now, in this final section, we're going to look at words for discussing support and opposition. And the first word that we're going to learn is advocate. Don't confuse with advocate. Advocate is a noun and advocate is a verb, and it means to publicly support or recommend something. For example, in speaking part 3, you can use this word to express support for positions. Here's how you can use it. How should societies address the problem of plastic waste? Basic response. I think we need to reduce plastic use. Band 9 response. I strongly advocate implementing a comprehensive deposit return scheme for all plastic containers, which has proven highly effective in Scandinavian countries, achieving recycling rates above 90%. The next word is oppose, and it is the opposite of advocate. It means being against something. In listening and reading tasks, this word appears frequently when discussing political or social issues, and it signals disagreement or resistance. Take a look at this example. While the business community welcomed the tax cuts, environmental groups strongly opposed the reduction in pollution penalties that was included in the same legislation. Question: what was the environmental group's reaction to the legislation? They supported it because of the economic benefits. They were against it because it reduced penalties for pollution. The next word is incentivize, and it means giving people a good reason to do something. For example, offering a bonus for working overtime. Now, in writing task 2, this word can be used to discuss motivation strategies. So here's how you can use it. What can governments do to encourage more environmentally friendly behavior? Basic response. Governments should reward people who recycle. Band 9 response. Authorities could incentivize sustainable practices through a combination of tax rebates for energy-efficient home improvements and graduated vehicle taxes based on emissions levels. Now, our last word for today is deter, and it means discouraging someone from doing something, like how rainy weather can stop you from going for a walk. Now, in reading passages about crime prevention or public policy, this word appears quite frequently. Here is an example. The high upfront costs of solar panel installation continue to deter many homeowners from adopting renewable energy, despite the long-term financial benefits. Question: why haven't more homeowners installed solar panels? They don't understand the environmental benefits. The initial installation expense discourages them despite future savings. Now you know the vocabulary that you need to prioritize learning to score high in IELTS. And most importantly, you know where and how to use it strategically. And because you watched the video till the end, here's a little something from me. I've created an Anki deck containing all the vocabulary we went through today. Simply check out the link in description, download the file, and upload it to your Anki software. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions. If you like this video, you might also like this one, where I share secret hacks to boost your reading score that examiners don't want you to know. By the time you finish watching, you'll have a much clearer idea of how to boost your reading score in no time. Thanks for watching till the end. Until next time, bye.